You know, I mentioned earlier that, I wake up this morning, find out about the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal trailer. Of course, get my thoughts on that here. But that wasn't the only news that I woke up to this morning, nor was I the only one that was pretty much shocked by this. I mean, I wouldn't say shocked, but, we were expecting something to happen in the future. We just didn't expect it to be something that would maintain to future events and programming in the next coming years for both WWE and for both WWE NXT and TNA. But that is exactly what we woke up to this morning. Apparently, it has been agreed upon, and if you see a thumbnail that says TNA Genesis NXT, that ain't a mock-up. That ain't photoshopped. That is legit. TNA is now in conjunction with WWE's NXT presenting Genesis. It's still a TNA event, but it's also going to be partnered with NXT. So that means, you're going to primarily see TNA talent, but you will see some NXT talent sprinkled in as well. And if you don't believe me, here is the official, right here, the official release, the press release, if you will, on said partnership, if you will. And it says, and I quote, WWE and TNA Wrestling announced multi-year partnership. That's right. Let me read that again. WWE and TNA Wrestling announced multi-year partnership. And it says, in sub-headline, NXT superstars and TNA wrestling stars to appear across weekly WWE and TNA programming, WWE premium live events, and TNA pay-per-views. And it says, and I quote, let me get some coffee here before I read this. It says, and I quote, January 16th, 2025. WWE, part of TKO Group. Okay, let me read it. Let me read it. It says January 16th, 2025. WWE, part of TKO Group Holdings, and TNA Wrestling, one of the world's top wrestling brands and a subsidiary of Anthem Sports and Entertainment, today announced a multi-year partnership aimed at creating unprecedented crossover opportunities within WWE and TNA programming for NXT superstars and TNA wrestling stars. The agreement will enable talent to garner additional exposure across key WWE and TNA programming, including weekly flagship shows such as NXT, which airs live on the CW, and TNA Impact, select WWE premium live events, and TNA pay-per-views, in turn bolstering the in-ring developmental with exposure to world-class talent and coaching. This is, let's see, somebody quoted this. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Shawn Michaels, Senior Vice President of Talent Developmental Creative in WWE. This is what Shawn Michaels, HBK, said. This is what HBK said, and I quote, "This historic relationship demonstrates the collaboration and competition Okay, let me read it. This is what Shawn Michaels, HBK, had to say, and I quote, "This historical relationship demonstrates that collaboration and competition do not have to be mutually exclusive." Okay, that's not Shawn Michaels, that's somebody else. Let me reread that. This is what Ariel, what's his name? Ariel, I can't even read that. Let me tend to see. Ariel Shnerer, Senior Vice President of Content and Distribution for TNA Wrestling and Anthem Sports and Entertainment. This is what Ariel Shnerer, who I can say is the Senior Vice President of Content and Distribution for TNA Wrestling and Anthem Sports and Entertainment. This is what Ariel Shnerer said, and I quote, "This historical relationship demonstrates that collaboration and competition do not have to be mutually exclusive. Our partnership allows the TNA wrestling brand and its incredible athletes to reach a significant wider audience while giving WWE and NXT stars an opportunity to cross the line and gain valuable experience as they join forces with one of the most talented rosters in professional wrestling today. The response to our collaboration over the past year has been tremendous, and both companies have benefited, but the fans have reaped the greatest rewards from this talent crossover and working relationship. Okay, now this is what Shawn Michaels says, and I quote. This is what Shawn Michaels says, and I quote. We look forward to growing and evolving our partnership with TNA Wrestling and its outstanding group of athletes by creating new opportunities to further the developmental of our talent and to elevate the viewer experience at home. And that's what Shawn Michaels, HBK, said. They go on to talk about in this press release. Former TNA Knockouts World Champion Jordynne Grace and Joe Hendry frequently appeared on TNA programming in 2024, highlighted by an NXT Championship match featuring Henry and Ethan Page at No Mercy, and an NXT Women's Championship match featuring Grace and Roxanne Perez, that is, at Battleground. Many NXT superstars have also crossed the line into TNA Wrestling, including Wesley's short reunion with the Rascals, Charlie Dempsey in the North Corridor Catch Club, Riley Osborne, Dante Chan, Gallus, Ariana Grace, Santino Morella's daughter, Tatum Paxton, Izzy Dame, Wendy Chu, Brindley Reese, and more. TNA Impact airs on Access TV and TNA Plus in the U.S., in addition to being distributed internationally on TNA Plus and other leading broadcast platforms, including Sportsnet 360 across Canada. In November of 2023, WWE and the CW announced a 5-year agreement to bring NXT to broadcast television for the first time in its 13-year history. So yeah, that's basically what the press release says, and it is out there. I'll try to find it and put it in the description. But yeah, this is big news. Now I know already there's been people that have commented on it, and they have said that all WWE is doing, in their own words, is just turning TNA into developmental. From what I read there, it's not the case. It's not that way, if you will. Instead, what we're getting is TNA providing a platform for NXT talent that doesn't get much, screen time right now because there's nothing, in the works for them before they get called up. So what's happening here is TNA is opening the doors and saying, hey, if you guys want to have more opportunities to, wrestle and show the world what you're capable of, hey, our doors are open. Come on in. We'll let you have that exposure. Hey, we might even write you into some story arcs. And they did that recently. They did that recently with like Wendy Chu and Rosemary when Wendy Chu was challenging for the TNA Knockouts title. So you got those opportunities there, for talent that doesn't get utilized in NXT for the moment because, again, Shawn and his crew don't have anything lined up for them just yet before the eventual call-up to Raw or SmackDown. Now, on the reverse side, you have talents, as I mentioned, like Jordynne Grace, Joe Hendry. You got talents like Rosemary, recently. Even current Knockouts champion who just showed up in the crowd this past Tuesday, Marsha Slamovich, showing up in the crowd wearing the TNA Knockouts title. You have her, you have the Rascals, if you will, even doing the short reunion with Wes Lee, but you have the Rascals, if you will, Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz, coming over, Zachary coming back over anyway. You have them, you have, Joe Hendry, of course, like I said. I think I mentioned Joe Hendry, and he's expected to appear in the Rumble along with Jordynne Grace and Marsha Slamovich as well. Because that's another thing, too. This right here, this partnership doesn't just benefit primarily NXT and TNA, but they also talk about WWE Live, select WWE Live premium events, right? To me, probably one of the most, I guess you could say, what's the word that would be right to use here? Probably one of the most, I guess you could say, associated premium live events that WWE, under WWE's banner, that could benefit from this is the upcoming Royal Rumble. And to me, that would make the Royal Rumble, a lot more unpredictable as to who's going to enter, because you would expect, okay, we're going to have our established WWE talent from Raw and SmackDown. We're going to have some NXT talent. There's no doubt about that. But now you have the possibility of, here comes Joe Henry. Imagine the reaction he'll get in Lucas Oil Stadium. Like, here comes Joe Henry. Here comes, in the men's Royal Rumble, like, here comes Joe Henry. Here comes PCO, if you will. Here comes PCO. Here comes Frankie Kazarian, if you will. Here comes the return of Nick Nemeth, maybe as Dolph Ziggler again, or just Nick Nemeth now. That's going to be huge. And as far as the women, I mentioned Jordynne Grace. Here comes Jordynne Grace back into the Rumble, second year in a row. Now officially part of WWE's women's roster, or still part of TNA. Here comes Rosemary. Here comes Marsha Slamovich. Here comes Tess. Believe it or not, this could happen. Because, obviously they know how to be professional. Or show them, hey, got to be professional here. Here comes Tessa Blanchard. And imagine that. You can have Charlotte Flair in the ring. Everybody's expecting her to return at the Rumble. Imagine Charlotte Flair in the ring, and all of a sudden, here comes Tessa Blanchard. Her TNA music hits, out comes Tessa Blanchard. And standing right across from each other, Blanchard and Flair. Daughters of two of the original Four Horsemen. That is something fans have been waiting for. And now, more than ever, they got the opportunity to see it become a reality. And people need to understand that. This is about allowing opportunities to occur. And imagine, and not just that, imagine possibly Xia Li, who goes under a new name now in TNA, showing up in the Rumble. Maybe she'll show up as Xia Li. Maybe she'll show up as a new TNA name. She shows up in the Rumble and shows that, hey, look, I'm back. I'm new and improved. And guess what? I could have still been here full time. But you gotta let me be me. And the way I look at it too is that this won't just benefit NXT. It can benefit the main roster too, because there are talents in TNA right now that already have main roster experience, so they can get the opportunity to show up on the main roster while under TNA contract and show how much they've improved. While being away from WWE, and in that way WWE can reconsider. When their current TNA contracts come up, like, hey, maybe we need to give this guy, maybe we need to give this girl, a second chance here, because, hey, they've improved. They showed that this is what they could bring to the table. Let's bring them back. And that could happen too. And yeah, there's no doubt that's part of why this agreement's happening. The fact that it would allow WWE to reevaluate, their talents that are now in TNA, under real names or different names. It'll allow them to reevaluate those talents, and when those talents contract, come up, hey, those talents could be broken back, and WWE under the Triple H regime could book them better than they were before. You never know. And again, like I said, it opens the door. It opens the door for a lot of people, in TNA, and makes events like the Royal Rumble more unpredictable as to who's going to show up. Like I said, on the women's side, Blanchard and Flair in the ring together, Rosemary in the ring, Rosemary going to be in that match, Marsha, Jordynne Grace, Savannah Evans, that woman, oh my goodness. Tasha Steele. I'm just saying, you want an unpredictable women's Royal Rumble that you're going to talk about for a while? There you go. And like I said, the same with the men. Joe Henry could show up, Frankie Kazarian could show up, PCO could show up. You could have Eric Young come back to WWE. I'm just saying, Steve Maclin. I'm just saying, guys. I'm just saying the possibilities are endless. So when I read this, press release here, I know it's primarily just talking about, hey, NXT and TNA being the primary beneficiaries, if you will, from this partnership. But I also see when they say select WWE premium live events, like I mentioned, probably the most obvious premium live event, on the main WWE side of things that could benefit from this is going to be the Royal Rumble. So I would not be surprised if you see some of the names, maybe not all of them, but you see some of the names I mentioned from TNA show up in the Rumble this year to make it more unpredictable. And what's interesting about this too, and I know a lot of people are going to mention this when they talk about it, is this would never happen under Vince McMahon. The only reason Mickie James was able to come out with wearing the Knockouts Championship a couple years ago, or several years ago, was as a make good for the way she was let go from the company in the whole trash bag incident. That was a make good. The only catch is they couldn't call her Knockouts champion. They had to call her Women's champion. And that's it. That's all they could do. They could not say TNA Knockouts champion, Impact Knockouts champion, or acknowledge who she beat and everything. No. They just called her Impact, Women's champion, and that's it. That's it. Nothing more. Nothing more. And that, again, that was just a make good because Vince wanted to protect his image. Here, though, under this Triple H regime, it's like, hey, the gloves are off. You can acknowledge the accomplishments. Well, certain accomplishments outside of one. But you can acknowledge where they've been, what they've done, and, go about your day. And, this is why when you saw Pentagon Jr., or Penta, if you will, when he debuted, Michael Cole was listing off everything he did. AAA Tag Champ, Lucha Underground Champ, TNA World Champ. The only one he missed out was AAA Mega Champ, because I think he did have that too. But he didn't acknowledge AEW Champ, or AEW Tag Champ, or Trios Champ, because I think they did have the Trios title at one point. He didn't acknowledge that, because, again, WWE and Triple H, they are petty. There is no doubt. They are petty in in how they present certain stars that used to spend time in AEW and now are now part of WWE, or at least associated with them. And that's why Michael Cole did not mention AEW, and why he was very basically had huge emphasis, I should say, empathetic, if you will, when he said, welcome to the big leagues, or Penta is now in the big leagues, and all that. Those are shots towards AEW. And you can't tell me that this partnership is not another major shot at AEW, because AEW had a partnership with TNA when they were known as Impact. They had a partnership, but the only thing, when it came to that partnership, is the only thing they had, and that was related to it, was Christian Cage beating Kenny Omega for the championship, but not on Impact Television, but on the first episode of Rampage, which is no longer existing as we speak. And most of the other time, it benefited only AEW. It only benefited AEW. I mean, yeah, you had the Good Brothers who were the tag champs crossover with the belts and everything, but did they defend the belts on there? No, they didn't. They never did. Jordynne Grace has defended the Knockouts Championship on NXT. That would have never happened in the past. Never. And some people want to say, oh, this reminds them of the NWA situation. No. Let me correct you on that. When WWE did that partnership with the NWA, it's because the NWA wasn't a threat to them, or wasn't as exposed as TNA is right now. TNA, through TNA Plus, which is also something you can get on Fire TV and Roku and all that, and Access TV, which some places have, if you will. Basically, they have more exposure than we can give them credit for. The NWA never had that exposure. They never had that exposure or anything like that. And to Vince, they were non-threats. So that's why he teamed with them. He partnered with them. But you notice that he never really let the NWA Championship, even when it finally got showcased, get defended. He only let the NWA tag titles and the North American title get showcased, and that's it. Because to him, those were nothing belts. Just like the NWA was a non-threatening nothing company. Here, it's a different regime. Here, championships on both NXT and WWE can be defended on the different brands. The NXT tag titles, North American title, Women's North American title, Women's title, and even the championship itself can be defended on TNA. Or on TNA programming and pay-per-views. Same with the TNA championships, like I said, with Jordan, like we witnessed with Jordan Grace. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. It's a whole different regime. It's a whole different ball game. Vince would never allow this to happen. He wouldn't. Even when he partnered with AAA back in 97, if you will, 96, 97, he only did that because they were in San Antonio. San Antonio, and I say it with all due respect, no offense, has a very, just like California, has a very large Mexican population that mostly cheers. I'm trying to find the right words to say. I'm almost having a brain fart here. Mostly cheers for AAA talent when it comes to professional wrestling. That's why he did it. That's why he showcased them, because he knew the Rumble was coming up and he wanted to make good, wanted to make himself look good. You get what I'm saying? Get what I'm saying? But also, even outside of that, AAA, despite them being on Telemundo or Unimass and all that, well, they were a non-factor to him. They were not a threat. They were not a threat. They were a non-factor. And their partnership at the time with WCW was kind of like, in the water. It's like, yeah, some of their talent would show up in WCW and everything because contractually that was part of the partnership. But there was talents that did not show up in WCW. They would show up in WWE because, again, the partnership was kind of like up here, kind of up and down, if you will. I mean, I don't know much about it. Let me know in the comments if you guys know more about it. But the thing is, they were not a threat to him. TNA, even when they were Impact Wrestling, even when they were, kind of on the 8 ball for a while, behind the 8 ball for a while, but when they were behind it, he never took opportunity to partner with them. Even after the Mickey James Make Good situation, never took the chance to partner with them. And why? Because despite the fact that they were seen on YouTube, despite the fact that they were seen on Access TV, he still, and despite the fact that at that time when they went to Access TV, he still looked at them as a, not many people, I should say, had it, and, up to like how they have it now. I'm sure more houses have it. I'm trying to find the right words to say again. He still looked at it as a threat, despite it not being on a prominent network and also being on YouTube. He still looked at it as a threat, and when Vince McMahon sees something as a threat, despite the fact that not many households have the network that it primarily is on, the cable network that it's primarily on, when he still sees that as a threat, it's because he was paranoid. He was afraid that, if I partner with Impact Wrestling and allow some of their talents to show up on my shows and everything, people are going to see how good they are and they're going to want to watch Impact more than me. He's always paranoid. That's why all these partnerships he would even have, short-lived as they are, and, with what he would consider non-threatening organizations, that's why they were short-lived. That's why they were short-lived. Mainly because of the fact, that, he didn't see them as a threat. And I know people might bring up ECW. ECW was its own entity. Vince only funded it because Paul Heyman essentially agreed that, hey, once my talent is done, you can have them. And that's it. He said, once my talent is done, you can have first dibs on them. That was the deal. That was the deal that they made. He funded it because not only did he have an investment, he didn't have an investment in the company. No, he still saw them as a threat, but he invested in it in its dying days because it wasn't much of a threat anymore. And mostly he was invested in the talent. And when he would pay Paul Heyman under the table, you can't tell me that part of that paying Paul Heyman under the table was, hey, I'll pay you and back you up financially, but I have first dibs on your talent now. Not WCW, not anybody else, me. And that's why you saw the Dudleys go to WWE, above WCW. That's why, that's why you saw, like I said, that's why you saw them go there. That's why you saw Raven go there after his short return to ECW. He could have gone back to WCW if he wanted to. No, part of the partnership, Vince gets first dibs. And again, it was more about investing in the talent than it would be the company itself. Because I want you to notice something too. Yeah, he allowed them to plug a pay-per-view in 97. There's no doubt. He did allow them to plug a pay-per-view. It's because, though, he didn't see them as much of a threat. But as soon as that pay-per-view hit, guess what? He didn't acknowledge them ever again after that. As far as I know. He didn't acknowledge them ever again after that. There was no mention of ECW for at least a year or so, on television. Until, basically, I think he started noticing, that, when they went to TNN, they weren't getting as much publicity as they normally would outside of just the outside of the broadcasting of the show. So he started noticing, hey, they're not a threat that much. They're not as much of a threat anymore. TNN doesn't even want to promote them. They're not that much of a threat. You know what? I'm going to invest in them again, but only in the talent. And that's it. That's it. And here's the other difference too. Even investing in them, did he allow the championships to be defended on his show? Even during the 97 little partnership, little partnership that helped them promote Barely Legal? Did he let that happen? No. Did he allow Taz, when he won the championship for a brief period over Mike Awesome, did he allow Taz to defend the title? No. You know why? Because of the fact that he still looked at him as a bit of a threat. A bit of a threat and everything to his company, and that if he, in his mind, in my opinion, felt that if he allowed Taz to defend the belt, even in like the final year or two of their existence, that would get people to want to watch ECW even in its final year over WWE, and he didn't want that. He didn't want that. It's like, yeah, I'll let your talent perform, but I'm not letting them defend the title. And again, it all goes back to, I think, that partnership that we don't know much about, but that partnership where it was basically agreed upon, that he would have first dibs on the talent, and that's it. He wouldn't finance the company or anything. It was about financing, making sure he financially got the best talent he wanted above, before anybody else. Period. And I know that sounds a little weird and everything and ramblish, but you know what? I look at it that's how I look at it. Yeah, he allowed Barely Legal to get promoted and everything, but it's only because of the fact that he didn't see ECW at that time, before the pay-per-view happened, as a threat, the same way he didn't see AAA as a threat, nor later on the NWA. He didn't see them as threats. That's why he allowed them on television. That's why he allowed them to show up. He didn't see them as threats. That's why he allowed the only championships of that NWA invasion to be defended were the North American and tag titles. That's it. He didn't care. He didn't care any, outside of that. Let's be honest. Because if he did, he would have allowed Taz to defend the ECW championship after he won it. He would have allowed, even during that little promotional partnership for with ECW to promote Barely Legal, he would have allowed some titles to be defended. He felt threatened. And the only reason he financially backed them is for the talent only. He could care less about the company. And again, I want you to notice, in between that time frame, after Barely Legal, and even going into 2000 and all that, I want you to notice something. There was no real acknowledgement outside of, basically acknowledging where certain talent came from. Like when the Dudleys debuted in WWE as a part of the roster, everybody knew where they were from, so they had to acknowledge it. They had to say, hey, you can acknowledge where they came from, but that's it. You can't say anything else after that. Because, again, I want you to look at that. After Barely Legal, did ECW have any more of a presence and everything like they used to? No. I mean, they would get acknowledged, by Jerry Lawler and a few others here and there, but they didn't have that much of a presence anymore. They didn't. They didn't have that much of a presence until, or acknowledgement, if you will, until about the dying year. Yeah, the last final year. Vince saw the writing on the wall himself and it's like, hey, they're not a threat anymore, even though they're still on TNN, and everything. They're not a threat. You know what? We're going to take their spot anyway. You know what? I'll let them show up on my show. I'll let them show up with their title, but I won't let them defend it. Because he still saw them as a threat. Period. Period. End of story. And that's the difference between now and then. Because Triple H and Shawn Michaels, Nick Khan, and Ariel, not Ariel, but Ari Emanuel, Ariel Helwani, he's a podcaster, sorry. But, this is why Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Ari Emanuel, and Mark Shapiro, they have nothing against this. They like it. This is what, they're cool with this. It's like the more exposure, their talent that, is the future of the company gets, the more exposure they get to other audiences, like with TNA, the better, the better it's going to be for them in the long run, so that when they do get called up to Raw or SmackDown, they'll be ready. They'll be ready to go. And the same with the TNA talent. Not many people, like I said, have TNA have Access TV. More so now than when they debuted on Access TV several years ago. But what I'm saying is that not many still have it. Most people have TNA Plus, that's great. But most don't have Access TV, And, with this partnership with WWE through NXT, they can allow the talent to be shown on over-the-air broadcast television, with the CW. Come on. Think about it. People tune into the CW this past Tuesday. They see Masha Slamovich sitting in the audience holding the TNA Championship, getting acknowledged as such, as the TNA Knockouts Champion. You cannot tell me, all right? You cannot tell me that that's not going to get people to want to tune into Genesis this Sunday. It will. It will get people to tune into Genesis this Sunday. Order the pay-per-view, watch it on TNA Plus. It's going to get them to tune in and watch her match with Rosemary, which is a Clockwork Orange House of Fun match, which was created by Raven. So there you go. There you go. It gets exposure for TNA and their weekly show and their pay-per-views and everything. And in exchange, it allows, as I said earlier, the NXT talent that doesn't have much going on for them right now to get more experience and exposure to a newer audience, before, the eventual moment to be called up, or before Shawn says, okay, we have something for you now, you can be focused here. You can't tell me this isn't something that benefits in both perspectives. And again, going back to what I said earlier about, this being a shot at Tony Khan, it is. It is a shot at Tony Khan, because they could have kept this secret. They could have waited till Genesis to make this announcement and all that. No, they wanted to make it now, so that basically, Tony Khan sees it. Because Tony Khan, like I said earlier, he had a partnership with them, but he didn't. But the only people that benefited from it was him and his company. Yeah, him and his company. Because all the times that Kenny Omega had the TNA World Championship, he defended it on TNA pay-per-views and everything, but Tony Khan would also be in attendance, and they acknowledged him. And when he did lose it, he didn't lose it on TNA television. He lost it on AEW Rampage, on AEW television. So this only benefited Tony Khan. That's all it did. And one of the title defenses they did have for Kenny against Moose, guess what? It was done at Daly's place. It wasn't done in an Impact Zone. It was done at Daly's place. That's where it was done, and Kenny retained. You get what I'm saying? It only benefited him. It only benefited AEW. This is going to benefit both parties, and we've already seen that. We've already seen, the talents benefit from this. We have. Now you might say, well, it's not entirely true. Oh, really? Really? Okay. Look, Jordynne Grace not beating Roxanne Perez on Battleground. Okay, I understand that. Joe Henry not beating Ethan Page and No Mercy for the championship, NXT championship. I understand that. But guess what? Jordynne Grace defended her championship on TNA television and NXT television and won. They could have easily had her lose in her open challenge on NXT television. They could have had her easily lose to whoever was challenging her, and I think that was Sol Ruka. They could have easily had Sol Ruka win, but they didn't. And the same goes with the talent showing up in TNA. They could have said, hey, we're bigger conglomerate than you. Our talents are going over. Never happened. Never happened. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying, folks? Basically, long story short, this is more of, a benefit for both spectrums. It is allowing the developmental, upcoming future talent of WWE that doesn't have much going for it right now, but eventually will, to get more exposure, more experience, going up against those that have been in WWE and those that are still growing themselves, in front of their audience. As well, in exchange, TNA gets exposure for their talents on a wider scale, known as the CW, and premium live events, NXT-wise and WWE-wise, like let's say the Royal Rumble, that's upcoming. It gives them more exposure there, so that way, basically people will know about TNA and want to tune into them. They might want to subscribe to TNA Plus. They might want to ask the cable company, get me Access TV so I can see TNA Wrestling. There you go. And in the long run, it might even help Anthem Sports acquire a new distributing partner outside of Access TV for TNA Wrestling to be seen on, so that more people can see it. You see what I'm saying? It benefits everybody in the long run. And the only reason people will be critical about it is because those are the AEW diehards. They know that this is going to make TNA basically into the number 2 wrestling promotion and taking over that spot from AEW. Which, by the way, sorry for that pause there. I was going to think about what I was going to say. Which, by the way, couldn't even sell out a freaking music amphitheater last night. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you that TNA is going to last a lot longer than AEW the way things are going. But, yeah, I'm excited for this as a fan. And, again, it makes events like the Royal Rumble more unpredictable. Because, again, you got not just talent from Raw, SmackDown, and NXT going to be in it, but also now TNA. Again, imagine the names showing up in there. I mean, I didn't even mention Moose. Moose is certified WWE talent through and through. Imagine that guy being in the ring with Roman Reigns. I'm just saying, folks. So, yeah, this is great news for both companies. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Like the video, ring the bell for notification, subscribe to the channel. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere here on the internet. Go to all your favorite audio podcast affiliates like iHeartRadio, iTunes, Pandora, Spotify, Audible, and many others, where you can find BW Rosas' Discussions. That is my podcast. You can find them there. Also, check me out at deviantart.com at BVW1979. Check me out at odyssey.com at BW Rosas, rumble.com at BW Rosas, vimo.com at BW Rosas. Also, check me out at my Venmo and Cash App to help donate there. I got my Patreon. Link is in the description there. Also, check me out at inkbuddy.net at BW Rosas, and click on the link to the Teespring store to find merchandise you can't get anywhere else. Also, you can find me on Blue Sky at BW Rosas and Twitter at BW Rosas. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are overall about this. How do you feel about it? I do apologize for a little pausing here and there. This is what happens when you do things uncussed, unscripted, without bullet points. Just go with what you have. Shoot, if you will, shoot style. But let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear how you feel about this. And until next time, I'll talk to y'all later.